Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here to a facts, stats, trivia, and a top 10 for the rock typing. So the rock typing defensively is going to be pretty extreme, that we have 5 weaknesses. So we have some of the most weaknesses of any typing, and a lot of them are common: fighting, ground, steel, water, and grass. And then we get 4 resistances as well. So we're going to resist quite a few things, but we're going to be weak to a lot. However, offensively, it's kind of the other way around. We hit a lot of things super effective: bug, fire, flying, and ice. But we do get resisted by fighting, ground, and steel. Looking at the average base stats of rock-type Pokemon, it actually gets really crazy from there, that we are 15th in the hit points, 6th in attack, so we have some power, but then we're 1st place in defense. So we have the highest average defense of any Pokemon typing, so that just kind of shows the theme of rocks. We are dead last when it comes to special attack, and then we have a moderate amount of special defense, and then we're dead last in speed. So yeah, rocks are going to do rock things. They're not going to go anywhere fast. They're not going to do any mystical, magical, special-y things. And then we're about average, we're 9th place when it comes to base stat total. So we're right in the middle, and it gives us a lot of balance overall. Now, when we're talking about rock-type Pokemon stats, we have to talk about Shuckle. Shuckle has the highest special defense in the game, and is tied with 2 other Pokemon, both Mega Evolutions, for the highest defense in the game. So it's kind of crazy to see a Pokemon introduced all the way back in 2nd generation is actually kind of setting the limit. No new Pokemon have broken the 230 on the defenses, and that just kind of shows like Shuckle hanging in there as one of the sturdiest rock-type Pokemon. And then when it comes to the highest base stat total of any rock-type Pokemon, we have Tyranitar. Looking at the legendaries in the rock typing, there are going to be 4 of them, technically 3 species, but we're counting Deontay and Mega Deontay because they are classified differently. And 7.3% of Pokemon are going to be the rock typing, putting it at 10th place for the typing. Alright, so now let's get on to some more serious trivia. Even though the rock typing has the lowest average speed and special attack stats, some of the rock type Pokemon actually have some of the higher stats in that. Aerodactyl has 150 base speed, making it a tie for 5th place, and then Mega Deontay has 160 on the special attack, making it 11th place. So edges out other typings, even though it's dead last when it comes to those stat breakdowns in total. So it shows we do get a lot of differences in the way rock type Pokemon play. Now there's also some interesting things when it comes to special attacks for the rock typing. There's only 2, and they don't even have more than 80 base power. That we have Power Gym, which has our 80 base power, and few Pokemon get this, and then we have Ancient Power. Now, more Pokemon get Ancient Power, but it only has 60 base power, and that's all you've got if you're a special attacking rock-type Pokemon. It's not that insane. Next up, we have the ability Sand Force, that it strengthens rock-type, ground-type, and steel-type moves when in a sandstorm, and it's the only ability that interacts with the rock typing. So before 5th generation, there were no abilities that specifically helped out rock typing unless you include Sandstream, because in a sandstorm, rock-type Pokemon gain 50% bonus special defense while the sandstorm is active, so it can make up for that lower special defense in some cases. Also, as we hinted earlier, the rock typing has the most weaknesses for any mono typing, tied with the grass typing. So as you can see here, 5. Just starts off with 5 weaknesses, but if you combine them together, it actually knocks down some of those weaknesses, which is pretty nice. Now, maybe one of the biggest bits of trivia for the rock typing is back in the 1st generation, a lot of people confused rock typing with ground because it was paired so frequently, that people thought rock typing was actually immune to electric, and sometimes this mistake was even made in the anime back in the early days because the typings were so similar. However, the rock typing was paired with 2 other types, water and flying, for all of the fossil Pokemon, so anything else that the rock was paired with was actually super effective if you got over that mental block of thinking that rock was immune to electric. Very weird stuff coming out of that 1st generation with the rock typing. Now, when using the rock typing offensively, we get an interesting mix with some other typings. So using just rock, we're going to be resisted by 127 Pokemon. Remember, we did see quite a few resist, and that's going to be somewhat common. Fighting, ground, steel type Pokemon, anything paired with that is going to resist us. However, that makes it really easy. We pair up ground, boom. 4 Pokemon with not very effective after that. So rock ground going to be a very powerful 2-step combo, and a lot of Pokemon get this, that you see a lot of Pokemon carry Stone Edge and Earthquake. Earthquake is a very common move between almost every rock-type Pokemon, so we're going to be able to use that, or we can also go Rock and Water. Rock and Water isn't going to be as insane, but there are some uncommon Pokemon and legendaries that you'll see in this, so that works out pretty well. So Rock Ground in a lot of things will give you perfect neutral coverage. Rock Ground and Steel, Rock Ground and Fairy, a lot of things will come together, and then you can look for those super effective hits, that 495 super effective hits with Rock, Ice, and ground. It just shows that we can get a lot of really interesting pairings as long as you don't use water because of the grass typing resist that we get on that. Pretty much as long as you don't add a typing that resists fighting or grass, but then you can add flying or something and your coverage is going to be pretty solid. Alright, now it's time for the top 10 rock type Pokemon. Starting off with number 10, let's just go and put the whole Iron Armor trio. Aggron, Mega Aggron, Lairon, Aeron. They all work in competitive Pokemon play, and they all find some decent amounts of success. Aggron, just a very bulky Pokemon overall, does put out a good amount of damage. You can even use Lairon as an Eviolite Pokemon, and you can use Aeron as a really cool Pokemon, because if you set it up in Sandstorm, it gets Endeavor, and then you can like Shell Bell it and make it towards a Fear Pokemon that actually resets its Fear, because of the way that Sturdy works. So you get a couple of turns of being a really devastating Pokemon, and there are some combos with that. Also, Mega Aggron's very usable, has huge amounts of defense and the filter ability, so it doesn't take as much from super effective hits. Pretty much the whole trio is usable in some form, so that's why they're going to be number 10 on the list. Number 9 on the list, I'm going to put Archeops. Archeops is a very high potential Pokemon, has a lot of different combo things that can do that's really fun, and it just has good stats overall. 140 attack and 110 speed as a sweeper is pretty solid, and the defeatist ability isn't really the biggest thing ever, because if you're taking super effective hits, you're taking hard neutral hits with 75 hit points and defenses, you're going to get knocked out pretty easily anyways, so you're just a glass cannon with 140 attack. Archeops has some cool combos. You go Power Urban to Sky Attack and then Acrobatics, and then you can still carry some good coverage after that. I mean, Stone Edge, still very powerful. If you don't really care about the Acrobatics, you can still run Life Orb. 140 base power Life Orb with Stab Stone Edge is going to be pretty serious. You have some other coverage moves that you can carry, and even has some usability in double battles with Quick Guard and Ally Swap. You can make a lot of really cool combos and plays off of Ally Switch or Quick Guard, and you can shut down your opponent, but at the same time, you don't have an overwhelming amount of attack. It does take a little bit of setup, and if you do take a hit that you would survive, most likely it's going to proc Defeatist, or if you get like statused into Life Orb damage, it's easy to get into Defeatist after rocks or something. So it isn't a huge playmaking Pokemon, but still a very reliable Pokemon with good sweeping stats overall. Number 8 on this list, I have to put Kabutops. This Pokemon has trashed me in battles sometimes because of that Swift Swim ability, and it can also be very powerful in doubles. I've even seen it work in triples. It does a lot of really crazy things under that rain because Swift Swim, well, you're doubling its speed, which means you don't have to go hard into the speed investment, go a little bit into the hit points, and then the rest into the attack. So now you can survive a hit, run a Life Orb or something like that, as long as you're not getting hit by super effective moves. You can run that Life Orb, and then you set up a Swords Dance on a free turn or something, and overall, like, you get Swords Dance, Life Orb boost into this Pokemon, it's going to do tons of damage. You can run the Focus Sash if you want to play it really safe, and then you get your generic coverage, you know. Throughout the Stone Edge, get the Waterfall, nice dual stab right there, and you also have room for any kind of other move you want to put in here. Knockoff seems to work out really, really well. You also have Low Kick for normal type Pokemon. Depending on whatever one you want to use, throw it in there, and this Pokemon can really tear it up with overwhelming amounts of speed in that rain. Set up Damp Rock in singles or something, and you can actually get 3 or 4 good, solid sweeping turns out of a Kabutops. And if your opponent isn't ready for it, boom, they just lose. That's what Kabutops does, and that's why it's going to make it on the list. Next up, I'm going to put Cradily at number 7. This Pokemon is wild because it fades in and out of the meta in doubles so much because of that Storm Drain ability. Whenever rain becomes a little too popular, Cradily is like, hey, I'm a grass type that kind of counters rain weather setup, and I do pretty well in general. Also gets access to the stockpile, Curse Amnesia setups. It can do all sorts of really fun stuff. You Curse Amnesia or you stockpile into Swords Dance, it has its own form of sustain with Recover. So in singles it's usable, in doubles it's a nice counter Pokemon, and it still has good amounts of damage and coverage. We have the Earthquake, we have the Grass, also got Infestation in Generation 6, gives it a little more power overall. So there are a couple of fun things you can do with Cradily, and I think it makes the list because it finds ways to work, and people will tech it on teams pretty often when certain metagames call for it, and it adapts really well. Alright, number 6 on this list, I'm going to go for Rampardos. Now, Rampardos was an interesting pick for number 6, because in number 5th and 6th Pokemon, they're kind of in a tie. They do better things at better times. Some Pokemon are easier to use, some Pokemon just have more damage at certain times. So, Rampardos. Sheer Force Rampardos is absolutely devastating for damage. You get a free 30% on some moves with that Sheer Force as long as the effect is being nullified, while also rocking some of the highest attack in the game at 100 and 65. Now, the only drawback to this is that you are going to need like Jolly Nature and Choice Scarf, or else you just get overwhelmed because you have really bad defenses. Like a solid neutral hit can knock you out. You do have a lot of weaknesses as well as a pure rock typing, so there's a good chance you could just eat a super effective hit and die. So you need to Choice Scarf outspeed certain Pokemon. When you do, you just smash them with way too much damage. Also, the Mold Breaker is super nice as well, and you get all sorts of moves. You have Head Smash. Head Smash is absolutely just one-shots everything. Half damage recoil, so for the most part, you're going to be able to use it twice and then go down, but you also just 150 base power stab into some of the highest attack in the game is really nice. You can Earthquake into Mold Breaker. That means you can hit Levitate Pokemon for super effective damage. You can just build up onto your coverage. If you don't want the Head Smash, you can use Stone Edge, or you can also go with the Rock Slide if you're using Sheer Force. It pushes it to about the same damage as Stone Edge with better accuracy, so that's pretty nice. Then you can run other tech, Brick Break, Crunch. You might even see an Outrage from time to time because just high amounts of raw base power, and as long as you're outspeeding your opponent, they're going to be having a very bad time by taking a huge amounts of damage. And then number 5, I'm going to put Tyrantrum. So Tyrantrum, I feel, edges out Rampardos because while it does have some frailties, you know, it does have a good amount of weaknesses, it does have to set up with a Dragon Dance. Once it gets that Dragon Dance set up, it's a little better off, and it also has strong jaw ability, so it's getting some boosting power on offensive moves, and just the better speed in general. 58 base speed compared to the 71. You can Scarf Tyrantrum for some good effect. You can Dragon Dance, and you really don't have to worry about getting outsped as much. And then you also have the Dragon typing, so you can run Outrage. Dragon Dance and Outrage is a lot of damage plus stab. You can hold on to the Dragon Claw as an off kind of moveset option, and you still get Stone Edge. You can go with the strong jaw and go for elemental coverage. So I mean, you get all the Fang moves. Ice Fang's getting boosted to around 100 base power because of its strong jaw, so you hit a super effective on that. That works out pretty well. Same with Fire Fang and even Poison Fang, but a 50% chance to toxic poison the opponent works out pretty well. I wouldn't use it as like the ultimate fairy killing, but it is an option that you can carry, or you just, you know, you run your stab, you can run Earthquake, you can do all sorts of really powerful stuff with this, set up the Dragon Dance and win. In general, it's slightly harder to get Tyrantrum going in the right spot and in the right situation, but overall, the potential for this Pokemon, the cap of that potential is way higher, so that's why it's going to edge out Rampardos. Just better base stats, a little bit more overall, even though Rampardos is a truly devastating Pokemon in the right situation. Alright, and now we're getting into the serious parts of the list. Number 4, I'm going to put down Mega Aerodactyl, mostly because Mega Aerodactyl just has huge amounts of speed, 150 speed. Like I said, it's tied for the 5th fastest Pokemon, so you can find a lot of usage with that. 135 attack isn't that insane if you get Tough Claws. As long as you're finding really good amounts of coverage with super effective hits, that's going to boost out pretty well, and then you can just run nice coverage overall. You get Crunch, you also get Ice and Fire, so you can use that. Iron Head works against fairies. You can use the Stone Edge. Now, unfortunately, Stone Edge isn't boosted by the Tough Claws. You can even run the Earthquake, so Earthquake, Stone Edge, 2 coverage moves, and Aerodactyl is going to be able to outspeed, find the coverage, get damage down, and it can even work in double battles because it gets one of the fastest Sky Drops in the game. So Sky Drops is pretty much just like you cancel your opponent's turn with your turn, throw out Mega Aerodactyl into that Pokemon, it removes them from that turn. Since you're going to be outspeeding them, pretty much turns the double battle into a 1v1. If your Pokemon is better suited for that 1v1, then you go and take your advantage that way. When Mega Aerodactyl lands, if your Pokemon is faster than the Pokemon that's landing, you can knock them out and effectively neutralize them while still doing a decent amount of damage, at least breaking sashes, and then setting up a lot for the Mega Aerodactyl. So just the amount of speed and damage, this Pokemon's a huge cleanup Pokemon as well with its coverage. Then single battles, if you're near the end of the game, you know, a lot of the opponent's Pokemon have taken some forms of residual damage. Mega Aerodactyl comes in, Mega Evolves, boom, that could just be game right there from just being able to clean up so well. I think that this Pokemon has great stats, and it's just a very powerful Pokemon overall. And number 3 is going to be Terrakion. So Terrakion, it has a lot of weaknesses, but it's just a very powerful Pokemon overall. In double battles, you have the Beat Up Justified combo, and there's really not much to say about it. It's just a pretty solid sweeper. I mean, you have 108 on the speed, so you can run Focus Sash, you can go Life Orb, you can go Choice Scarf with an Adamant Nature, more power to you right there, but you get the Stab Close Combat. That's going to be one-shot city. I mean, Life Orb, Stab, Close Combat. If you outspeed an opponent, you know, you run that Jolly Nature, you go 108. If they have less than 108 base speed, and you just max out the attack with a solid neutral hit, that could be a pretty easy KO on that Life Orb. Justified, you can do the Beat Up combo in doubles, and then Rock Slide both your opponents down, or use an Earthquake You know, there's a lot of damage potential right there for this Pokemon. You run Stone Edge, you run Poison Jab, you just cover out for a lot of Pokemon while doing a lot of damage. Like I said, it's kind of a generic sweeper, but it's a really powerful generic sweeper that can find some other things that can work out for it. You know, also gets the Quick Guard, so has some protection qualities in double battles that you might not expect. Talonflame's on the field, well, hey, Quick Guard, and then you take care of Talonflame with the other Pokemon. It's just, if it outspeeds you, if it hits that power spike of outspeeding everything or being able to like endure one more hit back, I mean still 90 on the base hit points and defenses, you can endure a solid amount of hits with this, and then you just outpace them with the close combat. That's going to be game right there, and that's how Terrakion likes to play. So very high amount of power, very binary Pokemon, but sometimes that does work out pretty well. Alright, number 2 on the list, we are going to have Tyrantrum. I recently did a video on Tyrantrum, also Mega Tyrantrum. This Pokemon, it does everything. You can go for Dragon Dance setups, so if you want to outspeed your opponent, you can do that. You can go for Curse setups. Now, Curse is devastating on Tyrantrum. You have very high amounts of defense, you have good amounts of special defense, but Sandstream is boosting that special defense. So one Curse with the natural Sandstream and already giving you high amounts of attack, that could just be crazy. You're not going to take damage from almost anything. You also have many other forms of setup. You can go for Smooth Rock and go for Sand Team. That can work in singles or doubles. You can set up Stealth Rocks. You can just go for great coverage sweeping, Assault Vest. You can be whatever tank. You can be a special defense tank, be a physical tank, you can be just set up Destruction and Dragon Dance. If you get 2 Dragon Dances, you pretty much win the game right there off of this Tyrantrum, and it's tanky enough to set that up. That we have 100 or better in all of our defensive stats, and then when we Mega Evolve to Mega Tyrantrum, things just get even better. So a lot of times I feel that a Mega Evolution is kind of wasted with the stats. Mega Tyrantrum gains all the right stats. Even this 10 in the speed is very beneficial because it makes it to where we're going to be able to push that little extra amount. One more Dragon Dance is going to give us more outspeeds if we're going for a huge offensive. If we're going special, we gained a lot of defense, but we also got a little bit more special defense for that Sandstream and 164 on that attack. So one of the crazy things, so say we manage 2 Dragon Dances with our attack the way it is. We just go Adamant Nature, we're actually able to one-hit KO any 100 base hit point and defense Pokemon that isn't invested. So Mega Kangaskhan gets neutrally KO'd by a +2 Dragon Dance. While it seems like a lot to get 2 turns of setup for free, we don't have to invest into the attack. We can go high amounts of defense, high amounts of hit points, become this huge tanky bulk setup Pokemon that almost nothing can answer with once we get that setup going in our favor. Can also apply a little bit amount of speed depending on when we want to outspeed. We just become an absolute terror on the battlefield if we can set it up, or if we want to play whatever setup, tank, status, support Pokemon that we want to be. I mean, it even has Thunder Wave. So if you want to go Stealth Rocks into Thunder Wave, it can be a status support as well. It's a great Pokemon with incredibly high amounts of utility. Alright, before we get to number 1 on the list, I want to talk about honorable mentions. As for honorable mentions, I'm going to put Amistar on the list of honorable mentions. It has a really awesome Shell Smash, and it gets a huge amount of special attack from that while also carrying a Hydro Pump. So I mean, if you land that +2 Hydro Pump, your opponent is going to have a very bad time indeed. But there is a Shell Smasher number 1 on the list, so I didn't have too many Shell Smash Pokemon that do the similar things on the list. And then we also have Magcargo. I think Magcargo has very high amounts of potential. The problem is that it just has a very bad typing. That Fire Rock makes it weak to a lot. However, if you make it as a pure defensive tank, Magcargo can stall out some teams really well. It does have some very specific points of being played. Not really good on every team or against every team, so it is a bit of a liability, but the times when it's not a liability, it's a very destructive Pokemon. And then I wanted to put Shuckle and Regirock. So, talked about Shuckle already, high amounts of defenses. It just feels like it doesn't set up like it used to. That the power creep in Pokemon has kind of gone beyond what Shuckle is capable of. So it can still wall out, it can still do some fun things. You can Shell Smash for effective defensive gains, you can go for Toxic Infestation combos, it sets up Sticky Web, it sets up Stealth Rocks, so it's a very amazing setup Pokemon. Shuckle's good, and then we have Regirock. Regirock, huge amounts of defenses, some of the highest defenses in the game as well, with a good amount of hit points and attack, so you can run as a full defensive wall on the Regirock. Where I feel about it, it's a very limited Pokemon. It's going to set up Stealth Rocks, it's going to go for like Drain Punch and coverage until it goes down. Sometimes this is very effective. You can even give it an Assault Vest and go full offensive, and now you're a very difficult Pokemon to knock out while running that Assault Vest with all this defensive investment, but it's pretty much just going to be limited to just offensive moves or very simple kind of setups. It could be on the list realistically, but but I feel that it's kind of too easy of a Pokemon to see coming. And as for the number 1 Rock-type Pokemon, I have to put Barbaracle. This is a Pokemon that you really have to use to understand. The more you use it, the more you can really get a feel for how insane this Pokemon play is, honestly, that if you build the right team around it, if you understand what is going to threaten Barbaracle in the battle, there is almost no more of a rewarding Pokemon than Barbaracle. Even though you don't see it that often, it has devastating amounts of power because of these Shell Smash. So it Shell Smashes, and it also has good amounts of defenses and hit points overall. Like, you can still endure a decent amount of hits right here, so that means you can go with the White Herb, you can run Focus Sash, you can run Lumberry. Depending on how you tech against your opponent is going to be how you do in the battle, and if you kind of play to whatever weaknesses you're leaving open by the moveset you're running, then Barbaracle is just going to win, because you have good stats overall. 68 base speed isn't a lot, but you don't have to invest a lot of speed into it. Boom, you do something like this, that's going to give you enough speed to outspeed 135 base speed Pokemon. You can also change it around a bit, so that leaves the rest into attack and hit points, and boom, that's how you do it. You can survive a lot of hits in this realm. If not, you can just go max attack, max speed with a Focus Sash. If you're playing against the right team, sometimes you can just lead with Barbaracle, use a Shell Smash on the first turn, and if they don't respond to it properly, you win. And that's kind of the craziness about this damage. Tough Claw's Razor Shell. I don't think people understand how much damage comes out of the Tough Claw's Razor Shell. So because of your speed, you get to run the Adamant Nature. 339 attack, getting doubled, plus 30% more damage, so then Razor Shell, it's like a 100 base power move that's getting the Tough Claws boost into all this power. Neutral hits with one-hit KOs are pretty common like that. Also, you just run other coverage. That Earthquake, you get access to the Earthquake. I've teched in Night Slash before because tanky ghost setup Pokemon, you just Night Slash them. They go away pretty easily with this. You also get the Stone Edge. Now, the only drawback, I feel like the only drawback to Barbaracle is that there aren't any Tough Claws boosting moves for Rock. That's like really the only fault that Barbaracle has, but I mean, if you want to risk it, you run that Stone Edge, still 100 base power into the stab, still huge amounts of damage after that boosting, and that's really it. Like, I feel you have to really understand, you have to see this Pokemon battle, you have to have used it properly before to understand its power, but this is one of the scariest Pokemon I've ever used, and if you understand the technique just right, and you can play to its weaknesses, I feel that, you know, while it is an easy out to say, well, this Pokemon's good if you play to its weaknesses, also if you play Barbaracle really well, and you might, like, do something your opponent doesn't expect, well, then that means you can actually play around things that your Barbaracle is weak to. It might reduce your overall sweeping power by, like, forcing an early move, or playing around the Shell Smash differently, but it is a pretty nifty Pokemon, and I gotta say, it's the strongest Rock-type Pokemon I've seen in battle. So if you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like if you want to see more of these lists, and comment down below what typing you want to see next for the top 10 facts, stats, and trivia. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.